So, my name's Simon. Hello. I'll be around mainly just prompting the guys to talk about things. I'm the prompt engineer. No, okay, too soon. Fine. And again, if we go, Michel, you want to introduce and we'll go down the list just to say who you are, what your relationship with Gen AI, and, you know.
Beautiful. Yeah, hi, I'm Michel Tricot, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Airbyte. We are an open source data integration platform, meaning that everywhere companies have data, we help make that data actionable. And in the world of Gen AI can generate a lot of things, but not data. And what we want is really power and bring that data so that we can train, we can enrich prompts with data that company owns. So that's my little contribution to the Gen AI world.
Okay, am I audible? Yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Andre. I'm CTO for Data and AI in Europe, Middle East, and Africa in Microsoft. So that's what I do for a living, and part of what I do for a living is kind of helping large-scale enterprises to adopt Gen AI at scale, apparently, right? And to kind of adjust their data strategies, AI strategies to the new realities. That's what I do.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Libby Duane. I am co-founder and chief advocacy officer at Alteryx. Alteryx is all about helping any individual being able to solve with data, to be able to drive insights. And our technology platform is enabling more than 8,000 companies, probably some of yours, around the world, to be able to drive insights and empower all people within the organization with access to the right data for those analytic insights. So great to be here.
Thanks, Libby. I'm Ashok. I'm Professor of Innovation Studies at Royal Holloway, part of the University of London. We teach the Masters in Business Analytics, and really I'm here to show you the skills development aspects of whether it's using Gen AI, machine learning. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is get people into jobs. And so I'll be coming from that perspective of how do we train our next set of students to go out there in the world of work and really transform things for everyone.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rebecca Gorman, the CEO and co-founder of Aligned AI. And what we're doing, we're a deep tech company going back to the science to extend the foundations of what you can do with data to help you make decisions and models that are more precise, reliable, and controllable. Basically, do more and do more ethically and safely. And that includes all forms of machine learning, including generative AI.
All right, very cool. So we have a diverse range of different perspectives on generative AI, and that's one of the hard things in that everyone has a slightly different opinion of what we mean when we say Gen AI. I mean, obvious thing, who's used ChatGPT? Who's put AI on their CV because they've used ChatGPT? And it's more than just ChatGPT, right? We're not just talking about have you used that one service. So a little bit of just definition, just some canvassing opinions. What do we mean specifically when we say generative AI? What is it? What group of technologies? What specific thing? What are we talking about? Let's just make sure we're on the same playing field, right? Good luck, dear.
LLMs?
Large language models.
Yes, taking those large language models and being able to understand them and then determine are they the right model for us as a company to be using, or do we need to look somewhere else?
I would like to just jump in here and say that that's a great answer, and that's what probably most of us in the room are thinking about. Generative AI can also be applied to other kinds of data that aren't linguistic, and that's actually quite a fascinating area that some of you may be excited to explore.
And for me, ChatGPT and generative AI is a bane of our lives as academics. It's like we're thinking, oh my God, we got through all the essay mills. Now students just put their essays into ChatGPT, out comes something amazing. And we're thinking, how are we going to assess these students, really? And it's really, really quite difficult. And the main thing for me about the generative AI bit, as opposed to normal AI, is this whole thing about new and original content. And that's why we as academics are really finding it difficult. And we're almost all over the world thinking, how are we going to assess students from now on? Should we go back to Vivas? Should it just be exam-based? Or is there other ways of accepting generative AI, but going one step further? And we're just getting into that dialogue at the moment.
So I'm going to dive in. I know I shouldn't as a chair, but I want to. In terms of that, if we go back to when calculators first came out, and it was you were cheating on your maths exam if you used a calculator, are we going to start likening to that? And actually, it's just a tool. And actually, we were going to expect the workforce to start accelerating what they're doing by throwing it at a language generator, by saying, actually, can you do a first draft and I'll go with it? And if the next generation are actually coming out pre-trained,
Yep.
no, then actually they're going to start using it. Although, do they understand the domain knowledge and have they done it? And it's a whole area of confusion.
Yeah.
Any other?
I mean, when we think about Gen AI, I really think about the value it provides. And that's something that is very new compared to how we've been approaching machine learning and AI in the past, which was, in general, we see AI and machine learning as it's a classification, solving a classification problem. Whether it's a pixel, is that a pedestrian, or is that a cat? With generative AI, it's really what you are saying. It's the generation of new content. So it's really tapping into what, as human, we see as something that is core to what we can do, which is bringing to life new things that did not exist before, just by being trained from the past. And I think we're going to see a lot more coming from that in terms of just generating this new, authentic, but with some like informed from the past and new content.
Well, I think I'm the last one, right, to comment here. Look, I will go a little bit beyond the technology, right? Because although we are technology people here in technology companies, but for me, the moment we're in right now is more or less like a moment when the steam engine was first introduced, right? Imagine Gen AI as a steam engine for the brain, where basically which augments what people can already do with much more power, which empowers people with much more efficiency to achieve their goals. And to your point, the good thing about Gen AI, if to sum up that so far it cannot do a lot without human beings. So it's not the Gen AI creating this whole new context and meanings and all. It's human beings creating this new context and new meanings, and Gen AI acts as a reinforcement engine for human beings and human brains. That's what Gen AI for me, how I perceive that.
I'm hearing you say it's the enabler.
Yes.
It's the enabler of us, the human. And
Right.
I love the analogy you just used of the steam engine. We are at the very early stages of this journey. It's a technology journey. It's a data journey. It's all of us as humans globally on this journey figuring this out. And so I think it's a really exciting time to be in this space, because we all and all of our peers around the world are going to say, we remember when Gen AI was just beginning and the conversations were gathering rooms and convention centers full of people talking about this subject. So it'll be really interesting to see where we go. We together and where we go.
Right.
And that's a perfect segue, right? So what is generative AI? Yeah, it's generators. It's going to generate something. It's going to be a large language model that generates a lot of text. It's going to be generating video, images, mid-journey, all those things. Do we need designers anymore? Oh, questions. Yes, we do. But is it going to be around? So we were there when it started. We were there at the start of the craze, the bubble. But that's the next question. Is it a bubble? So is this something that's going to sweep the world and we're all talking about it, and then in 2 years we'll look back and go, oh yeah, remember when we thought that was the next big thing? Or is it actually the steam engine? I've heard it likened to Industrial Revolution, right? When they came out with the loom and then people got kicked out of factories and it changed society and actually forced the moving of people into cities. It changed the actual weave of how we work back in factories and textile mills and things. Are we seeing the similar thing happening with AI? So what do we think? Is it a fundamental change to what we do? Is it a technological flash in the pan and actually it's going to go away? That's a question.
I would actually say that large language models that are being created today are impacting society more like the printing press, changing the flow of information and the way that information reaches us and impacts us and the way that we interact with each other. It has the potential to be like steam power in transforming industry, but it's not quite there yet. An interesting fact about steam power powering industry: it was actually a very, very, very hard thing to industrialize. It required the invention of precision engineering. Steam power wasn't possible on an industrial scale without the precision engineering going into the components that captured the power from steam. And today's generative AI is not precise, reliable, and controllable enough to really make a lot of the transformations that we're hoping for from generative AI. But that's not to say we won't be there in a couple years. And that's something that a lot of us are working on.
I totally agree with you in the sense that when I first came into academia, I used to be a bridge designer and I taught architects. And recently, especially if you look at platforms like, I think it's called CoolX or whatever, in China they've been able to do a 550-room hotel from day one in 4.5 months, from start of the idea to actually making it happen. But as I was saying earlier to some of the panelists, the difficulty is that we're at the stage where architecturally it looks like it's been designed like robots, and that robots actually live in those hotel rooms. Yeah? There's no real flair to them. But then again, there are other tools that you can take a handkerchief, a piece of paper, and say, I would like you to design a 20-story building in this scruffed-up bit of handkerchief that looks halfway between Zaha Hadid as an architect and Norman Foster. And it will do it for you just now. So there are incredible things, and I do think, honestly, that rather than a lot of professions thinking, how am I going to do things differently with generative AI and AI, I don't think a lot of them are actually beginning to think, what are we as a profession anyway? Yeah? And I think these are profound questions, and I recognize, as both of you said, that we're right at the beginning of this journey, and we are at the steam engine phase. But again, the technology is changing every 3 years and almost going exponentially up. So there are going to be huge changes, but there's huge problems. Everything from privacy, the nature of that training data, all the deep fake stuff that you're aware of, and saying, in terms of intellectual property, whose is it? When I develop this gorgeous architectural design, does it belong to the software firm? Does it belong to Zaha Hadid, Norman Foster? Who does it actually belong to? Anyway, there's just some thoughts.
Yeah. I'm going to say that I do not believe that Gen AI is a flash in the pan. I believe technologically this journey that we are all on together is going to be just that. It's going to be a technology journey. And we as humans will figure it out because we want to make ourselves more efficient. We want to make our communities more efficient and have a societal impact on the work that all of us do. And so the power of what we as the human have to be able to answer all of the issues that we are hearing about already around Gen AI will address those, whether it be from a self-governed perspective or a local or federal perspective will handle those things. And we will continue to make ourselves more efficient as we are already doing with technology.
Yeah, I mean, talking about efficiency, when you're thinking about Gen AI, it's a building block of building something that is bigger. The same way computer vision was a big thing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, is just reproducing an ability to handle and understand information. And when you look at LLM and Gen AI, one thing that you get from that is the ability to structure data, to structure information in a way that was very, very hard or very, very capital non-efficient to do, where you had to have a human being behind the screen to start labeling data, to start like exercising human judgment on top of that unstructured data. What you get with large language model is the first step into structuring that unstructured data in an automated way. And I think that's a very important building block to building something that is smarter and that makes us more efficient as a human society.
Right. Well, I'm the last one again. Anyway, so look, I will actually take advantage of the situation, if you don't mind. Just 2 minutes, right? So we have a room full of brilliant people, well educated and all. So let's ask the auditory, right? My ask for you guys, can you please raise a hand if yourselves or your family members or your friends are not using Gen AI right now on almost a daily basis? Who's brave? Like, you see? I mean, that's a public vote. Thank you so much for those who raised their hand. So I would say from my place, what I see is like roughly 10% of the people are not using, at least are brave enough to kind of, to confess that they are not using Gen AI on a daily basis. So that's the answer, if it's hype or not. It's here, right? It's among us, and we will live with that, right? The good question is, like, whenever we will live with what we already have, or we will build and improve on top of what we already have, right? And don't get me wrong, I mean, sorry for coming back all the time to the steam engines, right? But there is a popular kind of theory among the historians that actually within the Roman Empire, they were almost be able to build the steam engine. But because of the society, how that was organized, right? Because of how the processes were organized, they haven't done that. So it's up to our society if we're mature enough to build on top of that, or it just will kind of dissolve and become a new utilitarian tool, if you will.
So I think it's going to be interesting next year as to whether we're going to have so many sessions around Gen AI.
Don't ask me to come, right?
We keep talking about steam engines. So currently we're in this gold rush, right? Everyone is racing to be the person that implements it. Come a year, 2, 3 years, it's going to be so embedded you're not even going to think about it. It's not going to be a thing that we talk about. If you finish a meeting and you get some transcribed notes and actions, you're not going to think, that's a generative AI model. It's just, you think that's just a tool of the comms that I'm using. But it is. It's a Gen AI model baked into what you do, and parts of it are going to be so commoditized, you don't even think it's a Gen AI model. You forget the fact that it is this fancy new thing. So I reckon, yes, there's a lot of hype around it because people are trying to race to be the first people there. I don't think it's going away. I don't think we're going to be as excited about it in a few years because some things that we're currently going, wow, my God, that's amazing, are just going to be, yeah, I can send an email. Yeah, no, of course it read my email and it sent me some actions. That's what computers do. But it's going to be a weird time. And there's going to be loads of new things that we don't even think about that we'll be doing. And that's what we'll be talking about. Will that be under the canvas of Gen AI? Will it be something new? Who knows? But yeah, it's an interesting time, right? So, some of you touched on it. This gold rush, we're all trying to do something. We're all going, I want to be the first person to have built X. What are the dangers? So we mentioned ethics, we mentioned governance, privacy. What are the key areas that we should be worried about? And I want to leave this open. So whether it's as a company, what do you need to think about? As someone developing a model, what do you need to think about? As a society, what do we need to think about?
Maybe I could kick off by exploring generative AI in terms of the external context, yeah? Of saying that if with Gen AI, you just want a legal document to do with signing a contract for your flat or whatever you can easily get that on there. However, if you want new things where the external environment is very uncertain, it's highly complex, we've been through the pandemic recently, and you're sort of putting in all sorts of stuff to ask it questions to solve problems for you in that highly complex environment. In a stable environment, it's not so bad, because the training data is from that stable environment. But in more complex environments, it's about how do we as a collective get involved with that sense-making of what it comes out with. Because my fear is that people are going to get so addicted to it, they just believe whatever nonsense it brings out, and without actually questioning it, and saying that, particularly when you look at organizational problems, it's about those people who can think outside the box about the problem that makes a huge difference. The technology may help in all sorts of ways, but if you aren't thinking differently, you're just repeating what happened 10 years ago that was in the training data set. So I think a large part of it is us slowly, with this steam engine analogy, of thinking, how are we going to make sense and train each other about those warning signs when things aren't quite right?
I mean, there was the case recently where there was a lawyer who put his case notes in and it cited some precedents that didn't exist.
Yeah.
They were structured and labelled and looked like a precedent, but they were hallucinations. It made it seem like a real thing. You can put me in ChatGPT and it will say, Simon Whiteley has written a load of books. I've not written any books, but I look like the kind of person who might have written some data books. And that domain knowledge and the ability to sense check and go, this sounds right, but is it?
Yeah.
Massive risk.
That is actually why I'm thinking it's really just a building block today, because we haven't been able to get rid of human judgment on top of that new information. And that's potentially a risk for companies and for societies, is when you talk to ChatGPT, there is so much certainty into the information that is provided to you that if you just, there is already so many fake news just by going on Google or false information that now suddenly you're talking to something that behaves like a human being, and this information is made up. Yes, it's informed, but it's made up. And until we figure out a way to exercise human judgment on top of this information, this technology can be a risk for organization. And even for us today, we use it at our company, at Airbyte. The people who are asking it are more using it as a productivity boost rather than an automation tool. So they are still the expert, and they decide if the information that has been written makes sense for the customer or not. And until we have that critical thinking, it's going to be a productivity tool, it's going to be a co-pilot.
But look, in reality, it's nothing different what you described, and it's true, but it's nothing different with, let's say, talking to the person who pretends to be an expert in something.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same. The difference is in liability, because you can put the liability on top of the person, you cannot put that on top of the model. And that's the only difference. So applying critical thinking and additional rigor, it's normal, right? And it's also the part of the normal scientific method, let's say, right? Or normal, let's say, culture, right? Of even writing the emails, right? Or writing articles. If the journalist just puts some random thing, right, into ChatGPT, it's journalist who is kind of liable and responsible for that, right? So that's a mix of liability and applying some rigor and common sense on top of whatever tools are producing, right? Or whatever other people are producing, or whatever even scientific researchers, sometimes they're producing something which later considered to be absolute nonsense, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the normal thought process we have for centuries, let's say, right?
Yeah. And I'll add on to
just
it.
Just to go back on this one, I would say one of the things, though, that we need to think about is today we are looking at this technology for information retrieval, which is something that we have been used to do on Googling, like asking a question and getting a few articles back. Meaning that in front of you, you have choice of information. When you are asking something to a chatbot, it's going to get you one version of it. So you don't even know that the choice exists. And that can become a risk when you're using this technology for just information retrieval.
Yeah. And
So you're saying we should all create spurious websites so we can train ChatGPT to believe our propaganda. Cool. Makes sense. Sorry, Olivia.
I was just going to add on to what Andre and Michel both just spoke about, which is the to get to that critical thinking, to be able to separate the real from the not real. What we have to make sure we continue to do, and this goes to the education, is we have to make sure that we don't develop these technologies in an isolated world. We have to bring in those, I'll say, experts or practitioners. And that's one of the things that we do today from an analytics perspective with our customers is when you are in, I'll pick on HR for a moment, our human resources peers in the companies that we all work for, when they're trying to understand more about the models that are predicting employee churn, for example, you need that critical thinking from an HR perspective. I can't pull a developer out of our engineering team and say, without any context, hey, I want you to build a model to predict employee churn. We need to make sure that that critical thinking is brought together and that these technologies are not developed in an isolation. We need that expertise. We need to continue to enable, in this example, our HR team to be able to think analytically, to be able to understand analytically so that they can then communicate with a data science team or an engineering team to say, this is what we need to build. And so there's that aspect, again, about the human and about the data being able to come together to build these right technologies.
And just to reinforce your point, Libby, what we find in universities, especially when I talk to my colleagues around the world, is that what employers at the moment are looking for is students who have both the domain knowledge and the data analytic, AI, generative AI all together, but they want both. They want you to be a biochemist with that data analytic knowledge, or a lawyer with that, but they're not looking just for a lawyer or just for someone who knows all about their AI, etc. So increasingly what you'll find in most universities is that they're developing these hybrid people who understand the domain, so that, because a large part of it is this situational awareness. So whether it's AI or generative AI, it will give you stuff, but it's then grounding that in terms of what does it actually mean in our domain. It's about context specific, and at the moment, as you were saying, it is about information retrieval. It's very, very poor on the context side, really, of saying that if I want you to write an email for me, but I live in Outer Mongolia, it's going to have huge problems writing that email for me. Yeah. Sorry.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I want to reinforce what the rest of you have been saying with a real-life example. So probably many of you in this room, you're here today because someone in your organization said, like, we need generative AI, like, make something with generative AI. Maybe it's up to you to figure out how you're going to capture value of generative AI for your organization. And this is a real-life example of what not to do. A supermarket chain decided to create this fun app where you could take a photograph of something on the shelf in the supermarket, and the generative AI would create a recipe out of the things that you've taken photographs of. Really fun, really exciting. Somebody took a picture of bleach, and the generative AI app gave them, you've probably guessed it already, recipes for things to drink with bleach in it, fantastic, delicious bleach drinks, bleach perfumes. This is this is the warning example for everyone in this room being tasked with applying generative AI in their organization. As the panel's been talking about, we need to think critically about how we use generative AI to make sure that we're not missing some potential use cases that people will think of for the AI on purpose, on accident, that's going to have a negative impact for the organization. Everyone in this room probably is already familiar with this sort of taking responsibility because you've always had to do that with big data. And so you're well prepared for this scenario. The really fascinating implication of this conversation is that the safety limitations of generative AI are resulting in us scaling back how we use it, how we apply it. So the supermarket example has taught us something that we shouldn't do. The lawyer example has taught us something that we shouldn't do. And as professionals, we're going to start making these mistakes less and less as we see these cautionary tales. So one of the impacts of the safety problems in generative AI is actually limiting the use cases. And over the past 100 years, there's been a number of periods in history where people have been excited about artificial intelligence is imminent. And then a few years later, we've had an AI winter where, oh, that's just computers. Oh, that's just business logic. And then AI is not cool again. It's possible we're headed to another AI winter, right? Oh, that's just generative AI. Maybe we're going to call it something different. Maybe we're going to drop AI out of the name. In order for generative AI to become more exciting and to enable more possibilities, it's going to have to become safer.
Just one thing to add, and because to your example with the supermarket, right? So there are a number of different organizations and enterprises which are trying to build similar capabilities. And the bottom line, and where the complexity comes from, right? The bottom line is that now organizations are trying to build the models to control the inputs, the models to control the outputs, and the models to control the models, right? And that becomes a little bit more complex, and also normally there are audit trails and the models to control and extract information from audit trails. So the amount of models around let's just use it, right? So initially it's very simple. But when you're trying to control that, make yourself liable and make the proper, let's say, results in controllable fashion, then you have to control inputs into the model. Then you have to control outputs from the model. Then you have to audit and control the audit trails as well. And typically it's done in automated way. It's done also with the models, apparently not with LLMs or Gen AIs, with specialized models, right? Even for the inputs, sometimes right now, if we're talking about the slicing problems, right, there are models as well, just to ingest data. There are models as well to ingest the data in the optimal way. So we have more and more layers of automation, and we're going to see that more and more coming, right, especially in the real use cases where liability is. So we will see that more often, right? And that requires more clean data, right? Proper training data sets, and all the stack of ML and general AI, like not generative, right? Also Gen, by the way, right? Another Gen AI, all right?
I'm looking forward to, in almost 5 years, I'm certain there'll be a whole thing within libraries of bookshelves of failures to do with AI in organizations. And I'll probably have written one of them.
Right?
No, I'm just saying that there will be, because it's just saying that people be so trusting, they'll be saying, oh, I'll use it for this or that or the other. And also forgetting about the training data sets that has been built on. Just before I came in here, I was with the LexisNexis crowd, and they were saying they developed a Lexis Plus, which is using generative AI, but they know that their training data set is on 200 years of legal data. Yep. So that, if I'm a lawyer, I wouldn't ever go to ChatGPT, I'd go to this gang. Yeah. And so increasingly, I think people are going to be questioning, where did you get this training data set from? How biased is it? Whether it's to do with gender, race, this, that, and the other, and be much more inquisitive than, at the moment, we type bits into ChatGPT and we're just sort of amazed what it comes out with. But no more, I don't think. But yeah, it's like, remember my name in terms of that failures with AI in 5 years' time.
At that point, there'll be like a fake me up on screen generated.
That's
You won't
right.
need it. I'm redundant at that point.
So next year we have a panel, AI horror stories, right?
So
Okay,
Simon, I'll add one more thing onto what Ashok just shared. The common denominator that I've heard each one of us speak about on this is data. We keep bringing up that four-letter word. It is all about us as a human race being comfortable with data, knowing that data's not going away. We all know that because we're generating it at significant zettabytes every day. And we've got to make sure that we're comfortable with data, we understand data, we're willing to question the data, we're willing to question models. And those are skills that have to be developed. And probably a lot of you have children in schools today that are already working with data. That's what we're going to see really continue to, I think, expand and explode. That'll give us that confidence, Michel, that you spoke about, of being able to question and ask the question of, is this real? Should this be the way that it is? Similar example to what I just did in that HR example, HR professionals can question, and in that context of employee retention, how do we make sure that everyone is comfortable being able to do that? So that's going to be an up-and-coming skill. It's already happening in universities where they're teaching this, so all of us have to be comfortable with data.
Okay, I'm going to bring an end to the ethics and risk side because I don't want everyone to leave entirely depressed. When I put the one like so from a consultancy side, dirty consultant mercenary in the room, sorry. We see the people who are actually really starting to embrace it and get ahead of it are the people thinking about these things and starting to plan for it. The people who have, like they went and put a data governance council and they involved people from legal and InfoSec and security years ago to say, we're not going to stop people doing it. We're just going to put the rules in to make it faster and make it easier. The people who have, they've brought in legal, they've brought in InfoSec, they've said, right, what are the models? What do you want to use it for? Okay, you can't use that model, use that service. You found this random service that's an AI model? No, we don't trust the data, there's privacy things, we don't want to send the data. And actually just starting to keep a bank of, here's the ones, these are the use cases we're happy with. If you're using it for this use case, it needs to have some governance and a process. Just starting to wrap it in a little bit of thought and process around those things. What was the training data? Who owns it? Who am I giving my data to? There's a famous tech company that sent their top secret data to OpenAI because they were just summarizing the documents, and it's like, don't do that. But just thinking about it and having a governance framework. Everyone loves governance frameworks. Yay! Anyway, so you've put those things in place. You've thought about the models. You've thought about the process. You've ticked off and said, you know what? There's no risk. We're happy with copyright. There's no ethical thing. Well, there's always going to be some ethical consideration, but we are happy with what is going on. What should we be excited about? So what are the use cases that you think are going to appear in the next year or two, or already have appeared? Like the cautionary tale of the supermarket thing. But if they actually did that properly and they put some guidelines around it, they could certainly use that, but they hadn't considered it. But what are the things that you think are going to start appearing, and where are we going to start seeing, like, just, what's the most exciting use case that people should get excited about?
It's hard to consider everything, isn't it?
Everything.
Yeah. So I think my comment about they haven't considered everything, it's hard to consider everything, is that every exciting use case, it's hard to consider all the potential failure modes. Yep. But there's a lot of exciting applications, and I think will be that present-day generative AI might not be quite there yet. It's really good for a customer service bot. It's really good for searching your company documentation. Those are low-hanging fruit. If you're looking to apply generative AI in your organization?
Yeah, Rebecca, I'll take that one step further. In our technology, and we all can relate to this, we don't like to document the work that we do. But when I build it and I pass it off to Andre and I go on vacation, Andre looks at it, he's like, I don't know what this is, Libby. You shouldn't have gone on vacation. We're building, to your point, that ability to automatically automate the workflows that our technology users are building. Because from a governance perspective, their IT organizations are saying, if you don't document it, it's not going into production. Let's take that hard work away from the user, let them think about that next high-value analytic problem they're going to solve. Let AI take care of the documentation for them. And it meets the governance rule at the same time.
Yeah. Thinking about use cases, for me, I'm going to provide a different perspective where the cases I've been looking at and also developing, and Libby knows a bit about this, is video-based case studies for student learning. And I always start with what is a business problem. And I have people in organizations who give me what that business problem is, so that then I can provide them with lots of different data sets which they would have had when they were had the same business problem. And it's getting back to basics. Rather than getting overawed with, oh, it's Gen AI and it's machine learning and it's a support vector machine algorithm that's brilliant and so on, of getting back to that basics, we're trying to solve problems, whether it's in organizations, disaster relief, etc. We've got data sets, but what can we come together to sort of just think about what would be really helpful in solving that problem? And then taking people through, yes, the tools, the data analytic tools, the machine learning tools, the Gen AI tools, but then saying, that's not all. That's just a start. Because then the next piece that I always video the people in the organizations is saying, how did you sell it back to your chief executive or the board of directors? What happened there? How much did they take on board? How much were they resistant to? And it's about change management as well within organizations. So for me, it's not getting carried away with the technology. It's recognizing that whatever the problems are in the public sector, the private sector, the non-profit sector, they are problems. And we're using data. And sometimes you don't even need to get fancy with machine learning and so on to solve a lot of those problems.
Yeah. So I don't know what is going to be the future for Gen AI. I'm mostly looking at it from what happened with mobile phone when, let's say, the first iPhone came into play. It was the new shiny toy. You can have your nice little fart app or your nice little flashlight app, and everybody was super happy. That was the mega hype, and that's what we're in right now. The reason, like today, the iPhone is the thing that drives me when I'm in London and I don't know the city, and now I feel like, oh, I could live in London or not, I still know where I am. It only became possible because every person had the ability to build an app. And I think once you've solved this problem of governance and data security, what needs to happen in organization, and it's going to be interesting to see in the future, is like which organization actually embrace that, is just put that tool into as many hands as possible. Because, as you said, it's this type of technology. If you put them into the hand of people who can think outside the box, this is where you're going to create the real applications of the future. And today we don't know what they are. Like information retrieval, chatbot for support. Okay, these are the flashlights. But we can do more than that. But we won't discover that if we don't leverage our teams to become the R&D for how to best use the technology.
Well, I know what will be like the next, I hope, what will be the next exciting use case.
No
and
breaking NDAs, no NDA breaking, it's fine.
It will be generating governance frameworks, apparently, right?
Oh, you're going to work with me.
You see, I hope for that at least. In reality, the things are changing super rapidly, right? But my big hope is that Gen AI and the most exciting use case for me will be getting people rid of boring work, right? And that's what copilots are doing right now, Microsoft copilots, for instance, right? That's what other applications on the market are doing right now. That's where we are going to, right? And getting rid of boring work is something which is of utmost importance for all of us, I guess, right? Because then we can kind of unleash some of the additional creative power. We can do more and achieve more with less, let's say, right? So I think that's the nearest future, at least.
I mean, you want to talk nerdy, boring work, and one of my favorite use cases, as a data engineer, I spend my life cleaning data. Anyone clean data day to day? You're not for long. I mean, the ability to throw out a data set and say, suggest some cleaning rules, and then just apply them. Yeah, that we're not far away from that being commoditized, let alone possible. You know, just so many of those day-to-day, just the stuff that we do because we're data people and we accept that's part of life. Not for long. You know, just the engineering workload. I do a lot of YouTube videos. We've suddenly come across a thing which I give it a YouTube link and it goes, oh, actually, here's 10 shorts made from it with the context and the suggested title. And that's now just commoditized, and that has saved me hours of work, just across the board. Just so many things that are out now, not even that are coming. And we're at the point when it's kind of hard to imagine what's coming because it's just anything is possible. But still needs a human in the loop. And that's like, you know, for me, that's the big message of it's an accelerator, it's an enabler. It might write some data cleaning rules that are garbage. And I know it's garbage because I'm a data quality expert. But then in the future, if no one does that anymore, are we going to be cleaning data and accidentally removing signal that could be used for a data science predictive thing, but we don't know because we're not looking at it? And that's why you still need someone in the loop to go, cool, that saved me an hour of work, but I still need to look at it and validate it and go, that's grand. I'm now a supervisor. I'm not a code monkey. And that, you know, that for me, I'm excited about. Any last moments? We've got a minute or so left. Any other comments people want to make?
Apply common sense?
Apply common sense. Okay. That you generate using ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. It's actually already installed. You know?
Okay, thank you for... Oh, sorry, Rebecca?
No, thank you for a fantastic panel. This has been amazing.
Thank you all for the panelists.
Thank you all
Thanks for joining
very
us.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.